I've just captured Paul. He's installed all our solar and battery system here, and I'd like him just to take us through what he's actually done. So aimed at ignoramuses like me who just want solar and the battery. So what's actually involved, etc. So can you just take us through what you've done?
You asked us for our best proposal to meet your requirements, which was as much generation as possible and battery storage with the option of backup.
I'm aware that the batteries have been put in, and I've got a brother who's actually done this. And he's got solar and he's got a battery, but when there's a power cut, he can't operate anything. So that was crucial to me. Yeah, and also to maximize the number of panels on the roof that we've got. So with the panels, how did you choose how many to put on the roof? Because it's a south-facing building. Take us through that.
Yeah, well, you wanted to maximise your generation.
Yeah.
There are a number of panels available on the market at the moment. There's a glut of different types of panels. So we noticed that there's plenty of space up there. So we decided to optimise as much space as possible. So we used our design software. We took physical measurements instead of relying on Google Maps. Took physical measurements, drew your building in 3D and superimposed the panels onto the design. Now, we've used these panels in the past. They're ICO's 450s, and they're a wonderful looking panel, really deep blue. And you don't see any silver soldering on the panel, so there's no sort of aluminium effect or silver effect reflecting from the panel. It's an all black, lovely looking panel. So that's why we proposed.
The thing I actually like about your panels is I was concerned about pigeons nesting underneath.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you actually had the best solution for doing it. In terms of cost and ease of maintenance, because another company offered to put flashings all the way around, and that worried me a little bit because I know one of the key things with a solar panel is overheating, and your brush solution allowed the airflow still to operate, whereas I can see...
It's a fantastic product, bird blocker, bird brush it's called, I think.
Yeah.
But what I like about it, it's easy to install and remove. So if there's any issues with maintenance, then we can
just easily
remove it to have a look.
Hey, and then just take us quickly through the DNO, the National Grid supplier. What did you need to do with there? Because we've got these panels now, and we have got a battery as well, and we needed to get permission. So what was the...
Yeah. So there's a process. There's a number of processes with the National Grid, but for residential installations, there's what we call a fit and notify process. Now, a fit and notify process is for installations that have inverters rated at 3.68. The National Grid will allow carte blanche to a point where every dwelling is allowed 3.68 of generation, 3.68 kilowatts worth of generation, without a network feasibility study. They will take responsibility for any capacity shortfall post installation. Anything over 3.68, which is what we've got an 11 kilowatt inverter, they will need and require from an installer an application. That application lets them know our intentions, and they have to do a feasibility study because it's over a 3.68 capacity. They'll check the network capacity or requirements on the network and will tell us what we can and cannot do in terms of exporting on the grid. After the application was submitted, they're pretty inundated at the moment, and I think they give us a 2 months lead time.
Yeah, we did wait quite a long time, yeah.
So the 2 months lead, they eventually came back to us with a 6 kilowatt export limit.
So our solar can do 11.
The inverter can do 11, yeah. So I think we got slightly more than 11, just a little bit over 11 kilowatts from the solar panels, but the inverter is 11.04.
And that is peak.
That's peak.
Okay, so that's when the sun's full on, the panels are at maximum.
So that's when conditions are optimum.
Yeah.
Okay, and the standard test conditions produce 450 watts each. That's at a temperature of, or cell temperature of 25 degrees, a mass of 1 or whatever. There's other sort of characteristics that need to be just right. The sun has got to be, producing 1,000 watts per meter squared and all that jazz.
Fine.
So if the conditions are correct and right, then that panel can produce 450 watts. The inverter then has a maximum of 11.04 kilowatts. So if your panels are producing more than that, the inverter will clip it because it can only produce 11 kilowatts, but it can take up to 20 kilowatts. So yeah, the capacity is maximum 11 kilowatts.
And we tend to always look at the maximum, but in reality we get in the winter less light.
Yep.
We get cloudy, shady days. So from my perspective, I think it's interesting to know when conditions are poor. Okay, you may have quite a lot of panels. Hopefully we'll get some output as well.
Yeah, certainly. Solar systems need daylight.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the beast. In overcast conditions, my rule of thumb is the system or the panels produce between 5 and 10% of what they're rated at. So as we saw earlier on, you've got a 12 kilowatt array or just under 11.
Something like that.
And we were producing 3 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were just seeing the sun break through the clouds. It wasn't really dense cloud, but it was overcast, but a little bit brighter than what we would call overcast, and we were producing just over really 10%.
And that will mount up through the daytime.
Absolutely, yeah. You were consuming 500 watts. You were generating, at the time it was fluctuating between 2 and 3.
It was, yeah.
So you were charging your battery, you were self-reliant.
And that's the advantage of having more panels.
Absolutely,
because of the
base load generation.
Yeah, because of the poor conditions. We always tend to think of maximum, but in reality we probably should be thinking on the lower side of it.
Absolutely, yeah, because we're not always consuming.
Yeah.
All right, you had a couple of computers on, maybe a bit of light in, your fridge, freezer, so your base load consumption was about 500 watts.
Yeah. We had the heat pump as well, although it's not.
Yeah, I don't know if it was running at the time.
I'm not sure either,
That 500 watts, your base load generation on a day like today will be pushing up to 2,000 watts.
Yeah.
So you're going to be constantly charging that battery throughout the course of the day. Even if it stays like this, you're going to be pretty much off grid.
Now you mentioned the battery, let's go and have a look at it and tell us what you've actually done in there. So what we've done is we put the battery in the garage.
Yeah, so one of your concerns was getting the car into the garage and fouling on the battery. So with the view to extending the capacity also, we wanted to leave a little bit of space beyond the original battery. So we've put the Powerwall as deep into the garage as we possibly do. We've left that capacity. We didn't want to double stack the battery, because if we double stack the battery here, then there's a chance that it's going to foul on the car.
Yeah, because I think we should just say this is a Tesla battery.
Yeah.
It's a Powerwall 3.
Absolutely.
We've gone for a Powerwall 3. We've gone for a Tesla because when I did my homework, it was the battery that if you get a power cut, you don't even realize there is one. My brother's got a Powerwall 2 and a friend as well. And a lot of the other batteries, when you ask people about power cuts, they say, oh yes, they do it. But then you have to throw a switch and all the rest of it. I don't know if anyone else does quite what Tesla does, but certainly my homework would give me that satisfaction. If there's a power cut, I want my solar panels to work. I want to be able to run my house. Okay, I may cut things down, but the Tesla will give me that.
Absolutely. There are other products that provide the backup, but the battery capacity at the scale it's at, I find there aren't any who've got the battery capacity in one modular part
Yeah.
with a gateway. So if you swing around and have a look at the...
Take us through what you put in, yeah.
So basically this is the gateway. It sits in between the electrical supply to the building.
Tell us what a gateway is. What do you mean by a
So a
gateway?
gateway, in layman's terms, is a fancy switch, and it controls the energy that's produced by the Powerwall 3 and distributes it through the gateway and into the consumer unit via some fancy switchgear inside. It's also a changeover switch. So if we lose the grid power, then this reacts in milliseconds and essentially calls upon the energy from the Powerwall 3 to supply energy to the building. We've had reports that it's seamless. Once that instance occurs, then nobody kind of realizes it's happened. That's how quick the switching process. During a power cut, the gateway actually disconnects itself from the grid also. The reason why it does that is because it offers the backup generation into the property, and whilst doing that, we don't want to re-energize the network with your generation. If we've got any National Grid members working on a substation down the road there,
They can get
the
it.
last thing they want
It's a shock.
is a belt.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
an electric shock. But what it's also doing, it's still monitoring the grid, so that when the time comes, it re-energizes, it acknowledges that, it then reconnects, and
Okay.
it turns it switches the changeover switch from backup mode back into normal operation.
Perfect. So this is the gubbins that makes all that happen. And when you say the consumer unit, that is over there, which is to the house.
This actually sits in between, it sits after, so this is connected first from the grid.
Okay.
And then from there we got a supply out to a circuit out to the battery, and then the tails come back and connect into
Okay, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so that's why we had to power down
Yeah.
for that period of time, so that we could do some relocating of cables.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the first sort of junction, somewhat, between the supply and your building. The tails come into the Tesla gateway, from the gateway back to the distribution board. There's a separate connection point in here that receives the energy from the Powerwall.
And from the solar.
And from so the solar,
Yeah.
the cabling from your roof on the main part of the building, and
Yeah.
we've got cabling coming in from the roof on the
Garage roof, yeah.
So we got two strings on the main part of the building, and we got a slightly smaller string on this garage. We've optimized the panels to take into account the potential shading from your close lying hedgerow there.
Take us outside and explain the strings and the shadow. How does all that work?
Yeah. So at different times of the day, we're going to experience, we're going to experience some shadow, and that's going to be cast from adjacent buildings, chimneys, and in this case, low-lying hedgerows, close trees. I'm concerned, or was concerned at the outset, of early morning shade, especially with the tree down on the corner, where the sun rises in the morning, and it's going to be behind those trees, which are going to be more dense. Solar panels are connected in a series of strings. Now, the way a string works is that all panels are generated individually, and all the energy is added together in a series string. Now, if one panel starts to fail through degradation, if it's soiled, if it's got a bit of shade on it, it's detrimental to the other panels that it's connected to in that string. What the optimizers do, they create like a parallel path for the energy essentially, and if shadow is cast on a panel, then it acts as a bypass essentially, and allows the other panels to perform as they would if they were just on their own. It's not going to be affected by a panel that's...
So the shadow actually shuts down a panel.
It doesn't shut it down necessarily, because
Or it reduces the output.
It does, yeah. It reduces the output, or optimizers are designed to help the whole string. These were the panels that we were more concerned about, because they're closer to the trees, and we optimized those.
Yeah.
And if we were going as far as optimizing these 7 panels, it was a good idea to optimize the rest of the array. And we can now see every single panel on the monitoring portal, so we can see the performance.
And this is showing us what the string is. That the top string, bottom?
Yeah, so basically the top array there is the layout that you see on your main part of the roof.
Yeah.
With the gap, yeah.
With the gap in the centre.
Entrance.
And these are the 7 panels on the garage. Because these ones now, they were commissioned after those ones, which is why they're darker.
Yeah.
They'll play catch up, but I don't think these will perform as good as these ones because they're closer to the shade.
I agree.
It's 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's the tree that Paul was concerned about, and we can see the shadow coming onto the solar panels at the top. Got some superb power being generated as well. And if we can look at the garage, it's currently clear of shadow, and the solar panels putting out 2 kilowatts of power, and that's at 8 o'clock in the morning. I just find that fantastic. Let's go back and join Paul in the garage with the power from these solar panels going into the battery. So what happens next?
We've got DC cabling coming in, connected into the DC isolation switch. So that's the AC side of the electrical connections, and as you can see here, there's an integrated DC switch, and that's where the electrical connections are for the solar panels. This area here, you can see a massive heat sink. That's where the heat is dissipated. It is drawn in under the Powerwall there. There's a grill, and it runs up and through, and it's extracted out to the top with 2 little fans at the top there.
And that grill, is that where the battery is?
So yeah, the batteries are mounted behind here. Inside there somewhere is an integrated hybrid inverter. Okay, now a hybrid inverter. It's a clever little thing. It's got the ability to receive the energy from the solar panels, but it can also act as an AC coupled battery only inverter, which is a nice little attribute for the Powerwall 3. It's an all-in-one product, which looks nice and compact.
And the advantage of the Powerwall 3 is it can discharge up to 11 kilowatt?
That's right, yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Powerwall 2 had a 5 kilowatt.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah,
it was about half that, yeah.
This produces 11 kilowatts.
But this stores 12 kilowatt, 13.5, and we can discharge it down to 20%, I think you said.
Yeah, so we've set it so that we've got a minimum state of charge of 20% for reserve.
So we can use it down to 20%, but the 20% there as reserve in case of a power cut.
Yes, that's right.
So it means that we can still run the house. But once we've got a power cut, we then need to choose how we use that power if it's a prolonged power cut.
Yeah. So what we're going to do in that effect is have a look. We've got a number of circuits in the consumer unit here.
I think we should just say we put 3-phase in here,
that's
thinking that 3-phase was best. But in reality, with hindsight, it's probably a good thing to put the 3-phase in, but to put a 3-phase circuit in may not have been the right decision, because we've just got an ordinary house.
Yeah. 3-phase has its place. If you've got a massive dwelling and you've got a swimming pool that's got 3-phase machinery, for example, if you're considering putting in more than one EV charger, then there's a very strong case for having a 3-phase supply. we've got a three-phase setup here, and we're not using all three phases, as you can see, because there's not enough circuits in the house to utilize it. So what we need to bear in mind is that the Powerwall, or the gateway, can only back up a single phase. So what we're going to have a look at here is repositioning some of these circuits and prioritize the circuits that we want to maintain during an outage, such as your air source heat pump, a lighting circuit, and maybe downstairs sockets.
So Kathy and I are going to, with you, work out which circuits we really need. But if we hadn't put this connection to the if we hadn't a three-phase circuit board here, we had a single phase, which is what most households would have had. It would just back up the whole house automatically. I think the other advantage I see with a three-phase, we've got an electric car outside. We can put in a faster charger. We do have an option of using all three phases to give us, I think it's 22 kilowatt or something. But in reality, we're retired. We don't need that faster charger. So it was probably good to put it in, but with hindsight, maybe we didn't need a three-phase circuit board, so we need to distribute it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
As you can see, the containment, we would try to keep it as neat as possible, because when we came here, this trunking was pre-installed before we got here, and we wanted to try and maintain the feel and the look. And we've gone for the
I think it
galv tray and trunking.
It looks really tidy. Certainly from my point of view, it's lovely to see. And also what I particularly love as well is today we saw our first solar generated electricity coming in.
There we go. So you were generating 2.6 kilowatts from your roof.
Wow.
So now you are charging your battery at 2.2, 2.1, and you were consuming 500 watts from your solar. So you were completely independent.
Wow. Fantastic. Lift off. Wow. So we're getting 2.7.
Yeah.
It's not particularly sunny. It's overcast sunny, isn't it?
Yeah. When I turn the solar systems on, it's kind of an anticlimax at times, because there's no bells and whistles. All you see is a couple of digits saying, "Oh, right, you're generating." For
me, it was lovely because I could see, even though it was overcast, we were generating 2.5, 2.9 kilowatt, and we were only using half a kilowatt. And right away I thought, oh, that's great, because I'm been selling it to the missus that we're going to have free electricity over the year and all this sort of stuff.
Well, when you compare that to a 4 kilowatt system, which is pretty much a domestic sort of average, a 4 kilowatt system, 10 panels of 400 watts. If on a day like today, you'd be producing 400 watts.
Yeah, it's almost what you need.
Yeah.
For a house.
Yeah, but where your base load was 500 watts, you would be calling in help from your Powerwall or your battery, because you're not producing enough.
Yeah.
But now you are producing enough on base load, as well as charging your battery. So going into the evening tonight, you'll have a full battery, and you'll be self-reliant.
Part of the installation is downloading the Tesla app and setting it up on my mobile phone. Paul sets this up for us. I never appreciated how empowering this app is in terms of information. What I really like about the app is Paul having shown us the gateway in the garage. There it is. He showed us the battery. He showed us the solar panels. He showed us the main switch board for the house, and he showed us where the grid is. And this app literally tells us how much solar there is. It's going to the battery. Okay, the house is pulling needs 0.3 kilowatts. We're getting 1.5 of solar, so 1.1 is going into the battery. None is going to the grid. But it's a very easy way to actually see what's going on. But we'll talk a lot more about this and how we export and how the whole thing was set up and how we're running it. And we'll also compare it to a Powerwall 2 in another video. No, it's really important. Thank you very much. I really appreciate what you've done with us here. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the whole thing works, because Powerwall 3s are pretty new in the scene. And what I'm also asking Paul to do we can install a second battery to the side here.
Absolutely.
And Paul's let us room there, but we'll put a DC backup. It doesn't have the rectifier, inverter.
No, it's just battery only.
So, yeah, so it's not as costly as the Powerwall 3 on its own, but it can install it there.
Yeah, and it look almost identical. It's just slightly thinner.
Okay.
It's battery only.
Yeah, yeah, no, good. It's good. I'm, really pleased you got here and look.